He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is the Alex Marlow Show.
Welcome to the Marlow Show. I'm Alex Marlow, and I'm glad you're here. Welcome if you are new, and a special thank you to any of you who picked up a copy of Breaking the Law. Still doing incredibly well, topping some charts on Amazon, which I appreciate. Guys, I think I got something here. I really think this is a big deal. I think this is the scandal of the century. It is blatantly illegal to engage in targeted political persecutions from the justice system in this country, and yet we saw that repeatedly over and over again against Donald Trump, which doesn't just undermine him. It doesn't just undermine you as supporters. It undermines the institution of the presidency itself. And it's just a matter of time before people wise up to this. And you're going to want to have been there at the start. That's all I'm saying. So Breaking the Law out now. People raving, absolutely raving about the new book. I've been reading such flattering reviews. They're kind of blowing my mind. I'll read some of those on the show, but we're action-packed today, so I'm not going to do that right now. But people are loving the book. They're saying it's my best book of the three, which I don't know if that's true, but maybe it is. Maybe it's the best one. I don't know. Who am I to say? It's part of the American canon now. It's for the public. It's your book too now at this point. Okay, so we got a big show today. There's a ton that happened in the news over the weekend and a ton happening right now. I want to opine on the MSNBC rebrand that's coming. I saw a massive electric vehicle fire that shut down a major highway in LA. I want to talk about that. We had James Comey coming out as a Swiftie. We got the NFL cheerleaders with the feminized men and the NFL cheerleading. Trump's going to war with mail voting. All that stuff that I will get to, but not on the show because I had a big guest here. Chef Andrew Gruel is here, and he's one of the leaders of the MAHA movement. Super interesting guy in the, I would say, trying to reclaim our health from the cabal of corporate conglomerates and lobbyists who have set us down this terrible path where we're addicted to all sorts of unhealthy stuff. He's trying to unwind that web. He's a restaurateur, father of many children, and just a very, very likable and sweet, sincere guy, and knows a lot about the food industry, and has been a very popular commentator in his own right. So a lot of you are probably familiar with his stuff. Right now, while we're having this conversation, Trump is meeting with Vladimir Zelensky in the Oval Office. I'm watching it on my feed right now. Zelensky was forced to put on some sort of a suit, though it doesn't look like much of a suit. And maybe they're talking about a trilateral meeting between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States. Perhaps that's coming, but we're not seeing anything definitive yet. And maybe this could be the beginning of peace, but not seeing anything that is going to preempt what my plan was for the show today. But I will tell you, if you're curious for my takes on all these things, I'm hosting for Larry Elder tonight and tomorrow as well. And then not only that, I will turn some of that into show content. So we've got that for you coming up. So those of you who like the live radio format, and if you're inclined to call in, make sure to tune in, and maybe I'll do the Thursday show too. We haven't made that call yet, but I will make sure to repackage some of that into the podcast feed so you guys who follow me can check that out. But overall, today, I want to talk to Chef Gruel. We got him here. It's a long interview, but I think it's a good interview. And you're going to learn a lot of thought-provoking stuff for one of the real industry experts and just a really interesting, thorough American. Before we get into that, I'll tell you about the American Beverage Association, one of my great new partners. I want you to think for a minute about the drinks you grew up with and still love today, the ones you got to have at a barbecue or in the break room. We're talking Coke, Diet Coke in my case, Diet Dr. Pepper. I think I might need to make a Diet Dr. Pepper run right now. We got the Pepsis, of course. Diet Mountain Dew is another favorite. These are iconic brands. They're part of America's story, and they've been for over 100 years. They've been like that. And with everyone talking about American jobs lately, the companies behind these beverages have been walking the walk the whole time. America's beverage companies are making American products with American workers in America's hometowns. They employ over 275,000 men and women in all 50 states. They're people who show up every day, they do the work, and deliver for our economy and our communities. See for yourself what they're doing at wedeliverforamerica.org. wedeliverforamerica.org. Good partners, very good people as well. So I encourage you to check out the stuff they're doing. I've continued to be very busy, a little sleepy today, but I'll tell you, you know what knocked the sleep right out of my eyes? Crockett Coffee. Crockett Coffee, this is roasted to perfection, small batches in our nation's heartland. You could feel like you're a Western settler or a podcast maven while you're sipping on it. It could be the dark roast, my favorite, mild, light roast, decaf, mushroom organic blend, K-Cups, founded by my friends Buck Sexton and Clay Travis, great broadcasters, funny guys, interesting guys, and clearly know their coffee because they're doing a great job with this product. Part of the proceeds go to Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Reminds you the good people at Crockett never forget, and you get a discount. Promo code Alex at checkout, 20% off. That's promo code Alex at crockettcoffee.com at checkout. And that's a great way to save yourself a little bit. But the main thing is it's coffee. We all drink it for the most part. We should drink. It's the best. And there's a really quality cup, and that's what matters most. Check it out, crockettcoffee.com, promo code Alex. All right, let's get into it with Chef Gruel. All right, I've been wanting to talk to Chef Andrew Gruel for a long time. He is a restaurateur. He is a city council member. He's a common figure in social media and a MAHA advocate. A really interesting story, and it's just one of these people who's super high energy, and I love high energy people who try to get a lot done and squeeze a lot out of life, and I think we're wired very similarly in that regard. I have a lot of similar interests with the food issues that I think have faced the country and some real common sense ways of dealing with some of those. Plus, we're sort of neighbors. He lives a little south of where I do in Los Angeles, which is we're all kindred spirits here. We all tend to find each other, we California conservatives. Chef, it is great to be on with you. I'll tell you one thing at the start is that when the whole pronoun craze started happening and people had to, supposedly put their pronouns in their bios, I announced on my radio show that I would like to be known as Chef. That would be my pronoun. But it feels like stolen valor now because ever since the bear came out, now Chef is almost like a captain or a doctor in our society. It's almost like a vaunted position. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like your social cred has gone up?
I think it has. I haven't watched The Bear, but I definitely feel when I walk around in public spaces, there's a different aura to it.
Yeah, it's sort of an exaggerated version of restaurant life, which you know better than I do. But I was a server for a few years in a pretty high intensity kitchen, and it was they just sort of lean a little extra into some of the intensities, but it captures some of it. It's all right. I don't love it, but it's okay. It's not bad. They got one character, and I won't say which. But I'm sure people who watch that just does feel like a force fed DEI thing, and it's just very distracting because it just jumps out at me like that person shouldn't be here. Like that person would not be in this kitchen normally. But I don't mean to get too digressive, but Calico Fish House is your restaurant also if people want to check that out. And tell us about your backstory because it's really interesting. I heard you do a long interview with my friend Marissa Streit, and it was just super fascinating how you ended up in the food space and your personal history. If you could give us a little taste of that, I think that'd be nice.
Yeah, I was working in restaurants throughout high school and into college. I grew up in New Jersey, and I went to a small liberal arts college up in Maine. And I was spending, 40, 60, 80 hours a week in kitchens. And there was a certain kind of aha moment where I said, wait a minute, I'm spending more time in restaurants in the kitchen and kind of studying this like social, political, liberal philosophy at school. Perhaps I should lean more into the restaurant side of this because I don't necessarily know exactly what I want to be doing. So I left college after 2 years and hit the road and did my apprenticeship and ultimately went back to culinary school. Once I realized that's where I wanted to be, was in that kind of food and hospitality world, went back to business school, studying food marketing and restaurant hospitality and, did apprenticeships, et cetera. And that, kind of took me on this journey over a 15 to 20 year period working in restaurants all over the country, a little bit internationally. But I landed back in California because I had a passion for kind of marine stewardship, the ocean, but I was really understanding kind of what was happening with the supply chain. And when the economy tanked in 2008, 2009, I got an opportunity to actually run a nonprofit. The only thing that had money still, of course, were nonprofits when the economy tanked.
Right.
And to run a nonprofit with the Aquarium of the Pacific right down there in Long Beach to start a sustainable seafood program. But really, what was interesting about it is that 80% of the seafood consumed in California is done so in restaurants. So they wanted a chef with a marketing background and a business degree to actually create and manage this program to get more chefs to serve the right types of seafood. I expanded that program to more of like a food policy /chef/seafood marketing program and did that for 3 years. And after doing it for 3 years, I kind of put my money where my mouth was and started a restaurant concept that focused on sustainable seafood and grew that to about 45 locations.
Unbelievable. Hold on. So I want to pause. I want to hear about this, but I just want to throw out how It's just been, and this is where I'm hugely critical of the right. I've always been on the right, always been a Republican, but we blew this so bad where we let the left claim the mantle of environmentalism and of conservationism. The people I look up to, Dr. Michael Savage, a huge conservationist. You just laid out your background. I was just listening to an interview with Mark Levin. He's talking about he gives all of his charity goes to dog shelters. He was saying it's just, like, we love the earth. It's how we got branded is we're the ones who want to destroy the earth. And the left who panders to China all the time. They're the ones who are the real. I'm going to tell the audience later about 10 Tesla cars I saw on fire because of their sustainable batteries that we were told is going to save the earth and is really just enriching China and using African slave labor and stuff like that. And it's just one of these things where we miss that so bad. So I just love hearing your history because it's just so resonant with me, having grown up out here and being a conservative, but also wanting to take care of the planet.
Well, it's so interesting you say that because I grew up in a world, I was very involved in politics as a kid, which sounds very weird, but like youth in government, Model UN, I volunteered for all the state senators. My mother was an urban planner, so she was involved in the periphery in politics in New Jersey. And I was always I was very, very, very stitched in, but I was also, I was that like Sierra Club guy, right? Outward Bound, the Knowles program, hiking on the weekends, going up to the reason I went to college in Maine was because this college had a really great environmental literature program. So, I was reading Edward Abbey, the Monkey Wrench Gang, like all these environmental greats from Robert Frost beyond, like shaping my way. Hardcore. But I learned early, what's interesting was I was Republican as a kid growing up in Jersey, president of Young Republicans Club, et cetera. And I always took this kind of open free market approach to environmentalism. And I realized I was like, this makes complete sense. I remember just first learning about kind of the cliche of the tragedy of the commons and how poorly the government manages the environment. And when I got into college, I saw this dissonance between, kind of our approach to private property and running and managing the environment versus this very utopian communist viewpoint on how we are also environmentalists, but like we believe in this kind of communist perspective, more socialist, I think, in the late 1990s. And it never made sense to me. And I've been saying exactly what you've been saying. I'm like, so I started this program. It was a nonprofit. It was funded by the Pacific Life Foundation. We had a $500,000 grant to basically get people to eat more of the right types of seafood. With the idea behind it is that ultimately creates this kind of marine stewardship, and everything comes back to the ocean. And I was living in a world in 2009 to 2012 with like the Sierra Clubs of the world, the Greenpeaces of the world. Like those were my contemporaries. And I'm out in California and I'm a chef, business person doing this, like hiding my real viewpoints because I got to obviously, pander to these people. And I'll tell you really quickly, I'll make this little diatribe go full circle. So the funny thing is I was a hero to the left at that time, right? All the things that I've been saying through this MAHA movement, with like food systems and food policy, et cetera, are all the things that I was preaching back in 2009, 2012. And ultimately, when I developed my concept, was the foundation of my business concept was sustainable seafood. We're the first certified green restaurant in the state of California. Like it was all about that. All the people celebrating me were all the same people who hate me now, the same people who are attacking me now. I have not changed my viewpoints in the least bit. So what's hilarious is that what drove this previous election, and I firmly believe MAHA kind of tipped it over the scales. All the people who are anti-RFK and anti this MAHA movement are all the same people who literally built their lives on this. But now that kind of the a priori master of their universe has told them not to believe that anymore, they now hate it.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to go back to your personal narrative because it's really interesting. So you're doing, you have 45 restaurants now.
I don't anymore. So I created this concept.
No. But now in the narrative arc, it's I know you scale back from there and focus on other things, but that's just wild to me because I just think about how hard it is to have one successful restaurant, and it just seems incredibly hard to scale. And you're doing this pretty rapidly. And it feels like, seafood-based places would be even harder. How do you, just as an entrepreneur, that just sounds very, very challenging.
I mean, it was, and the seafood piece, it does make it that much more difficult because number one, it's a low demand product. Number two, it's a high there's high perishability, and number three,
well put.
the
Low
seafood,
demand, high perishable. Right.
yeah, and the seafood supply chain is one of the most fraudulent supply chains next to, kind of cocaine and olive oil. So, and I say that as one product, not two. But what I learned in running this nonprofit, I was really working within the supply chain, working with fishermen and aquaculturists and ultimately distributors. And I realized that, there was this, and everybody talks about being an entrepreneur. It's like isolate the problem and then come up with a solution. The problem was pretty simple, right? On the one end of the spectrum, you have like these fine dining, white tablecloth seafood restaurants. On the other end of the spectrum, you got like Long John Silver's. There was never a happy medium where you could actually get good, affordable seafood at the cost and convenience of faster food, like we were seeing with Chipotle and all the better burger concepts and so on and so forth through casual dining. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. Like, I'll do it myself. And the way in which I'll master that economic advantage through seafood is by buying in bulk directly from the fishermen. Makes sense, right? Like, it's kind of econ 101, and yet no one was doing it. And that's when I took my journey through the supply chain and learned why nobody was doing it, but was still stubborn enough to continue trying to do it.
And this is a good place to break out and talk some politics here. I think this is part of one of the things that you've been the champion of, explaining to people how these supply chains corrupt the things that we're eating, and there's huge breaks in them. And walk us through some of the essential things that you feel like people don't know but need to know about the stuff they're consuming.
Well, and I'll use seafood kind of as the example, although it's obviously applicable to anything. You cannot buy directly from fishermen in most cases. Yeah, in some kind of local rural communities, you can go out to the dock and buy directly from the fishermen. But the way in which the supply chain has been built over the past 50 years is that those local fishermen have to sell to the big guys who have to sell to one of the three biggest guys, whether it's a seafood processor, a meat packer, a meat processor, or a food manufacturer in the case of processed foods. So it's really become very, very highly consolidated at the top, which of course I understand from an economic perspective, just strictly principles of economics, but that's created a lot of issues within the supply chain where it's almost gotten too big. It's almost an oligopoly of sorts. And then it's the merging of those big manufacturers, or the merging of those companies at the top with the federal government, and in some cases the state government, where we've seen the real evil occur. So back to seafood, if I wanted to go and buy directly from the fishermen, like the regulatory gauntlet that I have to jump through and navigate through is so difficult. It's much easier to just buy from a Cisco or buy directly from one of the big guys, right? Now I'm just, kind of competing with all the other bland vanilla concepts out there in the world. My only point of differentiation is it's no longer the product, it's the way in which I prepare the product, but that limits me. And that applies to all of our food. So there's really not a local food economy. And once again, economics, well, some would say, well, let's look at comparative advantage, and that local food economy is going to cost more versus consolidating all of it. We get the economies of scale, but we don't take into consideration some of the externalities when we lose that local food economy, like building the local community, establishing smaller micro economies within that community, but most importantly, the health and the quality of those products. Right? Comparative advantages compares two exact products, but in the case of food, it's never the same, because one is always going to be much better for you, and then one is going to be highly processed junk that's void of nutrients. So
let's talk about processed food in general right now, because if you look at some of the evolution of food, it's really been so rapid. Is that we had widespread starvation, we had malnourished people, there just simply wasn't enough fresh food to go around. And so we used that stage game on with the processed foods, and now we find ourselves in a massive obesity epidemic where people aren't really thinking conscientiously about what they're putting in their body. We get a lot of people who are on the government dole and are given money to put unhealthy things that they don't know what it is in their body. And it leaves a lot of people very confused, because this happened really rapidly, other than, maybe the technology like computers and phones and stuff like that. This might be the most rapid place where we've developed and the same way with the technology space, the way we're seeing a lot of the rapid developments, a lot of the negative sides of it, with all these people who are depressed and who are addicted to computers and are leading these virtual lives. I think a lot of people just thought, wow, look at all this abundance of food, and they used it to build really unhealthy habits. It's very hard to rein this in, but talk to us about your perspective on this evolution and how we just went from not enough food to all this processed food to just huge levels of addiction and downstream effects that have been negative from that.
The not enough food piece of this conversation was international, and I still don't think that we actually took the bounty of the quantities, not quality, that we were producing and took it to those international areas, right? Like, yeah, we're throwing some peanut butter packets around Africa, but that's not solving the malnutrition. So it's like, it's funny because we created these competitive advantages, but then we used it against ourselves. So not just the highly processed food, but the genetic modification was ultimately the trigger, the catalyst behind a lot of that. And that intention was good. That was in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, where it was, we can kind of genetically modify some of these food, increase our crop harvest, and then we can be able to take care of some of these partner countries all around the world. And then that, obviously, the process of doing that and really intertwining science with food across every single platform led to the highly processed piece of this. And then it became the subsidies. See, this conversation can't be had in a vacuum because people talk about it from the perspective, as you did, which I agree with what you're saying, of like, the goal was good, we were going to feed a lot of people, but then we ended up obese. But let's look at the financial manipulation, right? Like this wasn't, oh, we created this product and now we're going to use it in a good way, right? Or we invented this internet. We invented this new thing that we're going to use in a good way, and it's ultimately become evil. No, what we did was we highly subsidized a few products in the United States under the under the false flag of we're going to maximize the efficiency by which we grow crops and then therefore be able to feed all these people. So soy, corn, right? Like these monocrops, and then from there we're going to reproduce those into products that we can feed the world with. But instead, we never created efficiencies. We just started pumping federal money into it. We started manipulating our currency and pumping all of this money into the farm system, the food system, et cetera. And it's not just those crops, it's everywhere through food. And in doing so, we tripled, quadrupled the size of the government, the size of these agencies, right? So as we're pumping more money and we're losing diversity of crops and diversity of products, we're getting sicker, the government's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then a few players are getting richer and richer, and we're getting rid of the small and medium-sized farmers and producers and food people. We're now basically creating this kind of like autocratic utopia of food where the only people getting rich are the government and the pharmaceutical companies. These international countries aren't getting any healthier. We're not solving any issues with malnutrition, and we're creating obesity and chronic illness across our own population on a level that the USDA, the FDA, and the health kind of, really really the health arm that we believe is there to help us of the government had no idea how they were going to approach it. So they really just kind of squandered all that decision making to the pharmaceutical companies, which only made the problem worse.
So I want to go to one of my greatest hits, which the audience has been with me for a while. Have heard me talk about this quite a bit, but it's been a while. So the first government hoax that I realized was being perpetrated on the public, and I've had a contrarian streak for a long time, but this is the first one where the government's really willing to lie to you in order to subsidize certain industries, is the food pyramid, which is where we were told we needed to have a bathtub full of fettuccine Alfredo every day if we're going to be healthy. And then when you learn that was a total fraud that the big agriculture put out in order to try to sell grain products, and that we all bought it and it was taught in schools, taught in public schools, it just makes you think that they must be lying to us about everything, and maybe they are. So I want to talk to you about some of the hot topics in terms of what people are consuming, and I want your take on them. And I want to start with one that I know you got a personal story on this, and I want to hear it. I want to talk about seed oils. Why are people so negative on seed oils, and what is the risk that they pose to our health?
Yeah, I mean, well, seed oils is another one of those byproducts of the big three, right? Like the seed oils are they do nothing for you. They're incredibly high in omega-6 fatty acids. The means by which they're processed into oil, they use a ton of chemicals in order to extract the oils. They're highly, highly oxidized, which we know is bad in regards to, kind of like metastasizing cancer in our bodies. But most importantly, creating these chronic illnesses, it's all about that deficiency of the omega-6. And I'll keep it simple, right? Like a doctor could go in, a nutritionist could go into all the different reasons why they're bad, but just at its very, very basic level, they're junk and highly industrialized like oil, right? And they are byproducts. And then lastly, they're full of omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 fatty acids are the bad omegas. Like you need a little bit of it, right? Omega-3s are the good ones. And we always look at our ratio of omega-6s to 3s in our diet. Back 100 years ago, maybe it was like 2-to-1, 3-to-1. Now it's like 20-to-1. And as that ratio imbalance has gone up, we've seen all these chronic diseases of what we know as the Western diet, right? Which because it creates inflation. See what I've been thinking about? It creates inflammation. I always make that mistake because I'm thinking about hyperinflation, but really it is inflation in your body now. Hyperinflammation inside your body, which leads to all these chronic illnesses. Sorry. So most importantly, though.
Hold on, but this is where personally this kind of turned you on to this, because I know that you had a lot of health issues that you had a hard time kicking, and you feel like that this was sort of the root of it.
Well, of course, and actually it was that seafood journey that got me there, because when I came out west and I'm studying all this seafood stuff, right? Like, ultimately the goal of the program was to get people to eat more seafood, but more of the right types of seafood, because we have a seafood deficiency in our diet in the United States. Right. We eat like 16 pounds per person per capita. Other countries, Japan, Korea, all these other countries, they're eating like 150 pounds per person, right? Wow. And interestingly, they're not suffering from the same chronic illnesses we are in the United States. And they consume seed oils, by the way. So what I found very interesting about that was it's that omega-3 thing, right? So I'm trying to eat all these omega-3s, and I'm out there trying to educate the public and about why it's so important to eat more seafood. And, they're like, well, what about mercury? And I'm like, no, the value of the omega-3s are better, offset the negative, right? Like I'm getting into all of this. And I had this moment where I'm like, gosh, no matter how much omega-3s I'm eating, everything I'm looking at, because I really got into labels at that time, is just full of omega-6s by virtue of these seed oils and other highly processed ingredients. By the way, it's not just seed oils. And I'm like, so if I cut a lot of those out, maybe I can get those, I'll increase the 3s, but I'll also decrease the 6s. And it was at that time. Now, I had a ton of like stomach issues growing up as a kid, in the 80s and the 90s, but just chalked it like, right, like the medical system chalks up. It's like, oh, you have anxiety, you have irritable bowel syndrome, right? Like you have all of these problems. And it was take Xanax, take Paxil, take like, at 16, 17 years old, going into college as a freshman, they're like, oh, you're anxious. Here's, Xanax, here's Valium, here's all this. But I was never fortunately, I wasn't a kid who was like excited about, taking Xanax or what have you. Like I hated that idea, right? So I never indulged in any of that. But so many in our generation did, because every single stomach ailment came back to you taking some sort of a mind drug. And I had other friends who were dealing with the same exact thing. And it wasn't until I switched and removed that processed food from my diet, my stomach, I started to actually heal myself. And it's because the inflammation came down, because I wasn't consuming those 6s. So for me, the seed oils are really you see, because there was a point at which they basically with the food pyramid where they're like, oh, well, we need a certain fatty element we need like a fat profile to everything that we eat. And I'm like, well, how great we can do it with the seed oils, whether it's margarine or, right, we can get into that conspiracy with like Crisco and margarine.
Yeah, sure.
And how ultimately, Bayer bought out Crisco and like how they merged, the pharmaceutical companies merged with the food companies.
Wow.
And they, it was incumbent upon the government to promote the consumption of omega-6s in place.
But you got to share this one, because I didn't know this one. So Bayer and merged with big seed oil, basically.
Yeah, like Big Pharma ultimately bought out Crisco. right? And
Wow.
when Crisco was the company that was promoting margarine, was supposed to be the superfood, the wonder food that was going to stop heart attacks. There were doctors throughout the medical system that were saying, no, be careful. This is not the case. This is going to have all these unintended consequences. It's not the saturated fats. And they got blacklisted, absolutely blacklisted from the medical world. Like, couldn't publish any articles anymore, couldn't practice. These people, it's scary, right? It's kind of like when you look at the anybody who was trying to call out the communism and the really the communist infiltration of the government during the FDR era, and they were completely blacklisted. And even today, you're not allowed to talk about it. It was the same idea, and the people who were trying to draw attention to this, there was millions of dollars in propaganda that was pumped in by these big companies in order to really drive the food pyramid going forward, even when they knew that it wasn't good for you, because some of the evidence started to come about as people were consuming this. But I grew up in that world, right? It was like margarine was everywhere. You never eat butter. You never eat saturated fats. And it's so funny. You said the tub of fettuccine Alfredo. Like, I was a distance runner growing up, and like it was pasta nights on Friday night, and I'm thinking about it, and it's like we ate Stouffer's garlic bread, bathtubs full of pasta, more bread, bagels in the morning, right? Like, it was just the carb overload. And then I'm sitting there at like 17, like, I wonder why I have stomach problems.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's such great history, and it's funny because there's always, unfortunately, explanations for some of these. Like, where do we get these bad ideas? There's usually someone who made money off of them, and who had ties to the government. I mean, there really is sort of what you learn. So on the seed oil concept, everyone's getting out of the seed oil game and in the tallow game. I know at your restaurant you fry in tallow. So talk to us about upsides and downsides to this. And I'm talking about financial, perhaps, if it's expensive. I will say, when I do the roast potatoes, I'm either using Wagyu tallow or duck fat, and it just tastes better. Like, I could never go back just because of the taste, but it's, you're more of an expert in terms of what are the potential health benefits. So describe this to us.
Well, thank you very much for bringing that up. So and I'm sorry I was going on there.
No. If you go on as much as you want, it's fascinating.
We did was, so when I made this realization, right, we're moving forward. Now I've started my restaurant concept, but I'm not thinking about that type of stuff anymore. In my life, personally, I was cutting out the processed foods, eating a ton of seafood, still kind of consuming the seed oils, right? Like, I didn't really tie it directly to the seed oils. Just generally speaking, I did. But I was eating so much seafood too. I think that's why my stomach was getting better, because that imbalance. So now in like 2017, 2018, I'm looking at like really marketing the business differently. Now I've got like 20 or 30 locations. We've franchised. And it's like, we got to think about the healthfulness of seafood. We really got to push that. I lost some of that along the way. And that's when I kind of come back to this idea of like the seed oils. And I'm like, we're cooking everything and frying everything in soybean oil, so we should probably get away from that. So in 17 or 18, I started switching away from the seafood, or from the seed oils in a commercial food setting. And the first thing I noticed, right, was how everything tasted different, right? Yeah. So put aside the nutrition. I mean, I'm a chef. I'm a doctor of food when it comes down to it, and the taste of food. And I'm like, this tastes cleaner. This tastes better. This changes the taste. And it was just this like, oh my God, why are we cooking in these seed oils? This is disgusting. Like, now I'm doing side-by-side tastes comparisons, and I'm realizing how bitter and acrid and disgusting all of our food tastes with the seed oils, to the degree that I can no longer even, it's like, do you have an herb or a spice that you hate? And when it's in something, you're like, I can't eat that, right? Like, with some people, it's stevia, cumin, cilantro, whatever it is. Seed oils became my cumin, right? My cilantro.
Yeah, which is my favorite spice. So that's totally unrelatable to me, but I can picture it.
Yeah, there you go. All right. Well, so then we took it out of the seafood, and we started having people come back to the restaurant when we were frying. Now at the time, we start frying in beef tallow, because I'm thinking saturated fat. So we were cooking in extra virgin olive oil, but it wasn't this like beef tallow sexy thing. It was actually, at the time, beef tallow was cheaper than any other alternative. Wow. So that's why we were frying in the beef tallow, but we were cooking in extra virgin olive oil. We were cooking in avocado oil. We were cooking in ghee and butter. And people would come and eat at our restaurants, and they're like, "Why is it I can eat your fish and chips or I can eat your fried food, and my I don't feel nasty afterwards, right?" And I'm like, "It's the seed oils, right? Like, it's the seed oils." And I know this is anecdotal, but this goes on now. We start getting customers coming in that are coming back just based on, I want to eat a fish and chips, I want to eat your fries, I want to eat fried food and not feel like junk. And that really was the foundation of our business. And then ultimately, when we opened up our new concept in 2021, 22, because we sold our other concept, we moved forward with it. But we were never marketing it, right? Like, that was never a thing to market.
No, you just figured out this is cost efficient, this tastes better, and people aren't feeling like crap. You didn't realize it'd be a whole movement. And then now we're here, and you're part of it. And I'm friends with Cernovich, and he thinks the MAHA component of the conservative movement is the most important part. You're a big part of that. Talk to us where you feel like this, because this is new in terms of this new Trump coalition that we're. It's a huge tent with a capital Y, as I like to say, but it's the MAHA component is so important. Why do you feel like there's so much overlap with political conservatism and the people who are the focus on the MAHA stuff?
Agency. Because MAHA is all about having agency over your body, what you put in your body, how you treat your body, that ultimately we have the liberty to control ourselves, and we also have the power to make the decisions for ourselves, and we don't need a government to tell us how to eat, what to eat, any of that, right? What to put into our body, what types of medicine to take, or furthermore for our family and our kids. So it became there was almost it was emboldened through and accelerated, that idea, through COVID, obviously, right? Like, we saw it in a much clearer setting, but that's what it comes down to, right? Conservatives believe that we have the agency to make decisions for ourselves, and those on the left do not. And
it's so right. I get so offended when I feel like the government has forced something untenable on me, whether it be the school system or they're not dealing with certain problems in the neighborhood that clearly the tax dollars should like traffic. I mean, it's very obvious. I live in LA, but it's just, I'm always offended because I feel like we spend so much money, and then I've been here for most of my life, and it's always terrible. It never gets better, only gets worse. It's like, why? How come no one figures this out? The airport always gets worse because there's an oppression level, and it feels like when you learned that the government, because of basically who I was lobbying the hardest, was feeding us junk that was making us sick, and no one's even talking about it. I mean, there's a level of deep offense that people take to that.
There is, and it's the traffic, right? Or the food. It's the same thing. I mean, the food piece is, really traffic through our body, internal versus external. We those of us that are conservative, we know that we as individuals can make decisions to fix a problem. Or we can do so with the partnership of local communities, neighbors, friends, family, whatever it is. But we don't need a government in order to oversee that. We understand that as it goes up the intellectual supply chain to the government, or further down, I guess, theoretically, that it's only going to become the decision-making process is, it's going to go from the, right, like the horse to the donkey, the old cliche, through the bureaucracy. It gets worse, and thus the traffic. But those on the left, they don't believe that. Like, they actually, because they don't want to make decisions for themselves. They want somebody else to make decisions for them. And they want to blindly place their trust into, because they're all about like immediate gratification, right? So like they want to place their trust in somebody else to make the decisions for them so that they can constantly pleasure themselves all day. And I don't mean that in a disgusting sexual way. I mean, like, they're all about pleasure. Everything's pleasure, right? So like gorging themselves, and like, they
think that's the point of life, is more vacation, more just like more Netflix time. And it's just like, I like all that stuff too, but it's like, it's not the point of life.
Exactly. So they're not rooted to anything. So they're unmoored. They're unmoored from all from all foundation, from any foundation, and the foundation that for hundreds of years we've built up through community and neighbors and all of that, right? And I'm kind of describing more of a political platform right now, or a mental construct by which I lead my lives, and many on the right do, and the left doesn't have that. And what's very interesting is that the reason they're so ardently obsessed with and stitched into what the government tells them is because that is their religion, right? Like that is their worldview, and they have to be. That's what they're moored to. They're moored from the top down as opposed to the bottom up. And going all the way back to my story about how nothing has changed in regards to my philosophy when it comes to environmentalism and sustainability and food and all that. I'm still the same kind of libertarian leaning business person, right? I'm conservative and I'm probably more Republican in some areas, but when it comes to the environment, I'm more of a libertarian. I'm very much hands off. Nothing has changed with me because I'm rooted in a philosophy that has roots. They're not rooted to anything. So when the government changed and suddenly it was like, oh, we've gotten so big that we need more control of it, they're rooted to the government. So it's like, okay, well then I guess that's what we believe in because they have no principles.
Yeah, well said. Again, Chef Andrew Gruel is with me. He's a restaurateur. He's a frequent commenter all over social media. You've probably seen him on Fox from time to time as well. And then he's got a kids cookbook, so you should pick that up as well. And so you've got 4 kids, I think. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so I'll tell you, I was thinking about this because I've got 4 kids too, but I work from home and I podcast and I type on the internet and I write books when they go to bed. And when you're in a restaurant, that is a lot of hours. And I know this from my restaurant days. I was front of the house, so it wasn't like an all day thing. The back of the house was there the whole day, and if you're a front of the house person, it's still a very intense shift. Like you're not taking calls during the shift. I mean, they say you're not on your phone at all. That you're just working. It seems like a very intense job, and then you're not just running a restaurant, but you're doing TV. You're a big MAHA fixture in that circle of the media. How do you have time for all of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what? Sometimes I think about that myself, but I don't overthink it. You just do it. Surround yourself with good people. My wife, Lauren, she runs the businesses with me as well. She's really active in all of this, and that creates kind of a smooth process by which we can also parent, right? And all of these things are, I'm the boss of myself. I mean, so if I need to be back with the kids, I'll be back with the kids and I'll figure out how to get it done.
So so how often are you in the restaurant at this point? Is it only one now for Calico? Okay. So and where is it exactly so people can get there if they're
It's on PCH in Sunset Beach. So it's right after Seal Beach, right before Huntington Beach in that little town, Sunset Beach, which is part of Huntington Beach. So Pacific Coast Highway, right on the water.
Yeah, I have not been down there yet. I'd love to, but I'll tell you, whoever does your internet marketing and whoever's your photographer for your Instagram down there, they give them a raise because that stuff looks unbelievable, and so I can't wait to try it myself.
That's Lauren. That's my wife.
Unbelievable. So anyway, she'll if she listens to this, she'll like that I brought that up because she'll get some more leverage in the household dynamics. But how often are you in the restaurant? Because I think people who have not, it was a great experience for me working in the restaurant business just for a couple of years when I was in college, but it really is just such a hyper energetic team environment in a thriving restaurant. It's kind of lame. I worked in one kind of lame restaurant that could be lame too, but in a restaurant that's doing well, it's a really intense thing. It's like a team sport almost.
Yeah. I mean, and once again, like I said, so I have a really good team now. So they've been with me for 15 plus years. Yeah. So I don't have to be in the restaurant as much as I used to have to be in the restaurant. Good. I mean, in 2018, we opened up 16 restaurants that year. We had 2 kids at the time, and we flew around the country opening all these restaurants with the kids. We took them out of school, and the kids were with us the whole time. Now, if I work 2 to 3 restaurant days a week, that could be 12 to 14 hours in and out, but I bring my kids with me as well. So they'll come in, they'll hang in the office, they'll work in the restaurant with me, the older kids, and I'll go back home for an hour or so and then come back to the restaurant. So otherwise, I'm popping in for an hour here, an hour there. I have all my meetings at the restaurant, so when I'm there, I can get other things done, some of the basic stuff. That's kind of the way in which I run it. So that's my hub. That's my office, if you will. I also happen to produce food there.
So, and then you got involved in the social media stuff and just really, but also from an activist perspective, it's not just come here and eat some lobster rolls. It's as an advocacy person. What drove you to do the public, not just I'm going to help people learn how to cook, I'm going to actually try to educate in terms of what's really going on in this world?
Well, I mean, that was really from the very beginning. That was what got me into food. So, I wasn't kind of just this, weed smoking kid that ended up in restaurants because I didn't want to do anything else with my life, right?
Yeah.
Like I was studying like piano performance and social philosophy and all this, and I got into restaurants because it was a pirate ship to me, and it was like in and of itself, there was this anarchy to it that I absolutely loved, and I knew that I wanted to use the restaurant industry and the hospitality space to be able to further my career, but understand people and the social element of running restaurants and where government gets involved. So there was a bigger picture for it for me. From the very beginning, I knew if I ever became an entrepreneur and opened my own concept, it was about storytelling. And the only thing that drove me, I wasn't going to open my own restaurant. The only thing that drove me to do so was after 3 years of preaching and understanding the seafood supply chain and how broken it was, and ultimately the food supply chain in general, because we went way beyond seafood. I'm like, somebody's got to do this, right? Like, someone has to do it. And of course that, saying that 2 or 3 times, it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do it. And that was it. Right. And then, so from the very beginning, it's about like storytelling. And then that was the foundation of our business. And the mission was about serving the right types of food, in that case, seafood, but all types of food, but also educating consumers. So the joke, people always say to me, they're like, Andrew, you need to stop marketing kind of these food stories the way you do, because you're actually getting more people to cook at home and you're going to lose your own business. I'm like, I want to work myself out of a job because we need to spend more time in kitchens and people need to actually take the power back and learn how to cook and eat the right way.
It's so interesting. You say that because it's not true whoever told you that, because we all love to go out to eat. It's all a pleasure. But ever since coronavirus, I've taught myself how to cook, and it's become my number one hobby for sure. And it just makes me appreciate when I go out to eat more when it's good, but it also makes me hate it more when it's bad. So What are some of the trends in the food industry? Because I'm noticing a couple things I want to observe. I feel like some of these places that are in the fast food realm, and I'm not a huge fast food consumer. We'll go to In-N-Out, we'll go to Chick-fil-A sometimes, but it's not a huge fast food family. But I've noticed the price of the fast food, aside from In-N-Out, which is a marvel, it has gone up. And the quality is the same or decreasing. I think a lot of these healthier alternatives to fast food, cost has gone up, the quality's decreased. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting thing because it feels like the prices in the grocery stores have not gone up, because I can go get a prime steak, enough for 2 people at the Whole Foods for $24. And it's just the same cut for one person would be $90 plus tax and tip in the restaurant. I mean, are you seeing any trends like that economically that are interesting that have crossed your mind?
Yeah, and also keep in mind when you talk about fast food, quick service, or multi-unit, kind of in the chain franchise world, like that's commodity food. It's a commodity, so everything is benchmarked against commodity pricing. There's no point of differentiation. There's nothing unique about it. So you have to stick within that commodity style pricing level. Like, so you're going to compare a McDonald's in Iowa to a McDonald's in California or Florida, what have you. So you don't have the liberty in those restaurants, and the only way in which they can actually increase margins is by decreasing quality or quantity. And that's what they do. Labor costs are going up across the board. Labor costs are going up, right? You're right about retail food inflation. You're going to see it first on the front side in the grocery setting, but then you're going to see it distill into restaurants. But there's a certain point at which that stops, right? Like, it doesn't keep going up. Not the case with labor. The regulations behind labor, it's not just the cost of labor. So it's not just the FAST Act, AB 1228 here in California that mandated everybody get paid $20 an hour minimum wage in McDonald's or any of these fast food settings. But then on top of that, you've got the wage and hour violations. You've got the PAGA lawsuits. You've got all of the labor elements that are put in place within the restaurant and retail world that add costs to the labor construct such that you are priced way out of the market. You'll never make money, like, period, unless you increase your prices to a certain level, or Or alternatively, you decrease quality and decrease quantity. And that's what everybody has done is they've decreased quality and quantity. So, that once beautiful burger that you were getting that came from a local farmer is probably now a combination of meat from Brazil and, Nicaragua and who knows where else that's been 3 or 4 times frozen, and it goes on the same bun with the same cheese. And you think it's the same burger, but it's not. It's a crap burger. And that's just what they've got to do. And that's happened across the restaurant space.
Wow. Well, what is it about? It feels like the restaurants I feel like have been suffering the most since the coronavirus have been that middle class restaurant, those chain restaurants that we all find ourselves at from time to time. And I usually think we're actually pretty good in this country that I get excited to go to an Outback Steakhouse. And then now it just feels like it's just really kind of those types, and not to pick on Outback. I've not been to an Outback in a couple of years, but that sort of realm, it feels like I've seen some real deterioration as prices have gone up. Have you observed that at all?
Yeah, 100%. And that's private equity, right? So we've seen just this.
I was hoping to say that. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I know, and I don't, I don't really say that as a pejorative. I think private equity has also been very good for the restaurant industry in certain ways. There's been some gems that have come out of their deals, but let's just be honest. There's an approach to that. It's like, let's build up value by virtue of top line sales. I've seen it, right? We could have from day one, right? Like we were fast casual seafood. We were getting hit up by every single one of the private equity firms and the larger hedge funds to grow. But ultimately they were honest with me. Like we were going to grow top line sales as much as possible and ultimately like flip and dip, right? Like that's the way it works.
I gotta say, I went to yesterday, I was in my morning routine after church. We went to a hot cafe in the San Fernando Valley area.
Yep.
And it just had great branding on the outside, great looking room. And it cost $50 for coffee and pastry for the family, and cookies were fine. Coffee was almost undrinkable, and the other pastries were terrible. And it was like I just got completely rolled. And it was just and you could see it. The private equity thing is that they sold me this brand, and it's not good. Like it was not good at all, and it cost twice as much as In-N-Out for the whole family.
And I'll kind of in a minute or so walk you through that whole process of how that happens. Okay. So let's say I got a 10-unit brand and it's doing really well, and private equity comes in and says, we can turn this into a 100-unit brand and we're going to give you all this money. You're going to take a little bit off the table and we're going to put our guys in. So now these guys, they have their guys, their team of operations people who kind of oversee and advise on a lot of these brands. First thing they do is they come in and they're like, we got to drive revenue, right? So they just start putting as much into marketing and sexy branding as possible, get all the people in the door. And then they're like, okay, now we need to, you got too many bodies over here, they just totally wipe out the labor pool. And they get rid of everybody. And now you're running on a bare bones staff and you're hiring the absolute worst people as possible because it's probably done from a corporate office somewhere who's working with a large HR firm who's just taking bodies through LinkedIn or Indeed or Craigslist or what have you.
Right.
And now you've got like lifeless bodies of pink-haired nose ring kids working at these restaurants for the cheapest amount possible. And they're pumping out the worst food in the world. And then the private equity guys a year later say, why has our quality gone down so much? We need to co-pack. Let's get all this production out of the kitchen. So now they bring in a co-packer to do all of their sauces and do like 90% of their work. So now it's slop and plop. And they're like, look at how we brought costs down with the co-packer because of these economies of scale. And now you got the kids that are just microwaving the food. And before you know it, this once unique 10-unit chain that was all scratch-made food is a Taco Bell, with really good branding and marketing.
Yes.
And it takes a year or two for customers to kind of really let that set in because many customers have made that branding part of their identity. So they don't want to rip themselves away from it. Especially those who connect themselves to brands like this.
No, that's part of this is the corporatism I complain about, is that we all feel very attached to corporations now. And I find where you find yourself rooting for different corporations and they're just not providing something that you consume, which is already, not an elevated form of life anyway. But we're like, now I identify with like, I'm really rooting for Facebook over Twitter. And it's just like, oh my God, how did we get here?
Well, so it's funny you say that because during the pandemic, I said over and over and over again that in the absence of sports, people are going to start standing behind political like politicians as if they're so the guy that was running around with like his Kobe jersey who knew nothing about politics, now they've shut down sports, like he's either team Pelosi or team Trump or what have you. And they did the same with corporations during the pandemic, because when they shut down sports or bread and circus, we all started getting behind corporations and politicians.
Unbelievable. That's such a great point. So you're dabbling in the politics too. So you're in the city council. Again, you must be an expert at time management. Maybe we should do a self-help book on time management, Andrew. We could probably give some people some pointers on this. But tell me about that. What's that like?
So I always knew I wanted to get involved in politics, but of course it's much easier to complain about it from the outside and then just like turn your computer off. But I knew if I ever did get involved in politics, it would have to be done at a local level. So let's lay out the groundwork here in California. We've got a state government that is just incredibly oppressive, and you've got this Democratic supermajority just doing the most insane things possible because they can, right? Like they're beta testing the left's insane platforms through California, and then you actually have areas in California. We both know the numbers. California is not as crazy left as people think it is. It's just the way in which they jerry-rig and gerrymander, right? Which is hilarious that they're claiming that they're the virtuoso saviors when it comes to not gerrymandering. And so you have these local jurisdictions where it's like, hey, we don't believe in any of this stuff, and we're going to put together our own charter city, or our own charter within the city. We are a charter city, and we're going to go against the system. And ultimately, here in Huntington Beach, I realized that there was just a cadre of like-minded, pragmatic people that were running government the right way. And I got involved just on the outside, once again, supporting them. And when Tony Strickland got, he was our mayor, and he moved over to state senate, and he took Janet Wynn's position. Janet Wynn went to Orange County Board of Supervisors, and then there was an open seat on the city council here. I was like, you know what, this is my opportunity in, and I moved into the open seat on city council here in Huntington Beach. It's a 7-0 majority. We've got multiple lawsuits against this Gavin Newsom in the state of California based on obviously like the housing element mandates and various other things. And here in Huntington Beach, we're proving to other cities, especially charter cities, that who cares what they do in Sacramento? Like, we'll run our city the right way. Clean streets, clean city, low crime, zero, virtually no homelessness, and vagrancy. And we'll be able to capture the golden nature of California that was once known for. And we're doing it.
Amazing. I love that. Inspiring. Everyone's got to get involved. And I say this to people, that if you're fired up, we can't just be a passive participant. We have to be active in some way, even if it's small. You can start small. And I think but good for you for getting involved on top of stuff, taking upon yourself to do that is really important. Okay. I want to go back. I want to get some more of the food trends, and I just want to get your take from an expert level. I want to talk about the seafood industry again, because farm fish, is that a myth that we don't like farm fish? Because it's one of these ones that was told to me, I don't like farm fish. Do I not like farm fish? And where are you buying your seafood? And you can give me sort of a tier list. Where maybe places that are good, like it, love it, gotta have it, in the spirit of Cold Stone Creamery, maybe.
All right, farm seafood. It's not an easy answer, so maybe we have another conversation about this another day. I'll say, generally speaking, it's not good or bad. It all depends on where it's coming from, how it's farmed, right? Like, there's no catch-all on this one. And the people who fund it, just so you know, the people who funded the farm fish is bad, that's the left, right? So, like, it's so funny when I post about it's the environmental groups of the world. When does a developer become an environmentalist?
When
he gets his house at the beach. All the people that are anti open ocean aquaculture and fish farming, it's because they're the rich elites living along the coast who don't want any activity in the ocean in front of their house or near their house. And they pumped millions of dollars into the Sierra Clubs and the Greenpeace and the Sea Shepherds of the world to tell you that farm seafood is bad, especially, there was a big farm salmon, and everyone thinks salmon, right? When you said farm seafood, you were thinking
I'm thinking salmon, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Every single oyster you've ever eaten is farmed. Clam, mussel, all farmed.
Wow.
Most shrimp you've eaten in the United States.
No, there's one time I went down to Santa Monica, like the Venice Beach, and I just hacked an oyster off of the pier pylon down there, and I just shucked that, and just on a dare, and I was blind for a week or two after that,
Yeah.
but
But that's you're right. That is a wild oyster. So commercially available. Like you can certainly go out and get it. But you're definitely gonna deal with some sort of benthic poisoning after that. And the list goes on in regards to farm seafood, trout, barramundi, you name it, right? So the thing about farmed seafood is that because of the fighting, there's really no framework or regulatory framework through which you can get permitted to farm seafood. We have no open ocean aquaculture policy in America. And the reason why that's important, all right, is because we're saying we're not going to establish it, we're not going to approve it, we're not going to permit it, whether it's through the National Marine Fisheries Service, Department of Fish and Game, and because all this money's coming in to make sure it doesn't get done from the Sierra Clubs of the world, so they can say we stopped this project or we're not allowing the U.S. to farm seafood and it's all because of this. Donate $5 at www.sierraclub.com. But instead, we're buying it all from China and Indonesia and Vietnam and all these other countries that are farming the ocean and doing so in a disgusting manner, chock full of not just chemicals, but they're ruining the marine environment. And we're saying, well, as long as, out of sight, out of mind, 80% of the seafood that we consume in the United States is imported. 65% of that is farmed in the open ocean from countries that we're hostile to in a military manner as well. So that's how dumb and backwards this is. We should do it here in the United States. In addition to the fact that one of the largest trade deficits behind oil and automobiles is seafood, we should do it here in the United States. And that's one piece of this kind of like manufacturing / tariff conversation that we're losing is when it comes to seafood, because people don't understand seafood, and it's driving me absolutely nuts. And to the point of aquaculture, it's like, everyone thinks, oh, farm seafood is bad. They want you to think that. Farm seafood is not bad if it's done the right way.
Yes. Okay, so let's go to food dyes. So food dyes, in a big effort, take dyes out of the food. I have no idea on this one. This one I'm completely neutral. Are a dye obsession overblown or underblown?
It's a good question. I mean, and especially as, like I said, when it comes to food and the environment, I'm much more libertarian. I get a little concerned about the government overreach, right? Like my perspective is let's educate, let's not regulate, and most importantly, let's break up the connection between the big food manufacturers and the government. And if we did that, if we came in tomorrow and we were like, you know what, we're going to have a 180-day pause on FDA, USDA, nothing's going to happen. Like nothing is going to happen at all as a way to kind of smoke out some of these corrupt connections between the lobbyists and big food and big pharma and all that. I think we would naturally see food dyes get removed overall because they would actually then look to the market to understand what the market wants, and they would change on their own. As for the science behind food dyes, I think that there's some food dyes that are really bad. I think they're all different. I think food dyes
tend to trust Bobby Kennedy on this stuff. He seems to be really thoughtful about it. So if he wants them banned, I tend to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Exactly. And some of them are bad. Some of them might be more natural and more organic, whatever, and no big deal. But I agree with you. Yeah, trust Bobby Kennedy on this. Although I don't like to put too much faith into like one person or one government agent or one government actor. But hey, we've been doing that for 40 years, so why not?
One thing I like about him is he does seem to weigh evidence, which is he doesn't seem to be as tribal, and that's what I like. That's why I was such a big supporter of his. Is that I actually thought that he seems to be committed to actually weighing out what the evidence shows rather than, and the evidence itself is a complicated word because science is always developing. It's never settled. But it does feel like he's actually going to be thoughtful about it. Whereas it just seems like the vast majority of people who get appointed those roles are just much more political, and they shouldn't be. It should really be a science-based position. It should be what does actually the science say? Okay. So you're a really healthy guy and you're around food all day and you're around, fries that are cooked in tallow all day. So I think most people would be 400 pounds if they had your lifestyle. So, give me a day of eating for you. What are you eating to stay fit?
I'll wake up in the morning. I mean, I have, a big pot of coffee and probably 5 to 10 eggs.
10 eggs? Oh
Yeah,
my
I mean,
God.
I eat a lot of protein first thing in the morning. Sometimes that's mixed in with steak, or I'll have that over a tortilla, and then I'm snacking up until lunch, and then probably 8 to 10 ounces of seafood for lunch because I'll swing by the restaurant, and then I run a lot too, do a lot of I lift a lot, and throughout the day I call it fitness snacks, right? Like I'm not into that. Okay, I'm gonna have an hour and a half of working out right now. Like I might, when I come home and see the kids for a few minutes, and I'm teaching them how to skateboard, I'll do 10 minutes of reps in the background with weights, right? And that's like a fitness snack for me. And then maybe
Wow.
I'll run 20 minutes at 6 o'clock just to get some extra steps in.
Is that a big effort for you to keep up with that? Because when I've been in my fittest, it's usually I'm doing something like that. Like I'll have, I'll do core during one of my conference calls, like in the second half when it starts fading. And then I'll do, I'll have a window after the second conference call where I'm on the bike, and then I'll be at the driving range, and it sort of adds up, but that's really hard when you're slammed.
Well, you have to be very deliberate with it, right? You almost need to schedule it in as if it's a conference call, but it's also fun. Like for me, for example, because of the supply chain stuff, I'll go and buy direct from a lot of these purveyors between Los Angeles and Orange County. I hate buying from food distributors, so I will go direct to the source. So a lot of times I'm driving and I'm picking up 10 to 15 or 20, 100, 150 pound boxes of seafood or other products, tallow from somewhere. So I'll use that as an opportunity. I'll actually do squats with them as I place them in my car, right? I'm serious functional fitness. So that's in there. And then a ton of, once again, I eat a lot of seafood. I'm not a carnivore diet. I eat a ton of pizza. I think that's actually the perfect food. Got a lot of cheese in there, a lot of good protein. But just being active with the kids. I mean, there's really no art or no science behind my strategy. It's all art.
Yeah, and then the kid stuff is it could be a catalyst. It could also be a reaction where you want to be in shape so you can throw the kids around, and then throwing the kids around gets you in better shape. So it can really work out nice in that regard. I gotta ask you about the ice raids and some of the places in California. You run a kitchen. The kitchen that I was in, or at least one of the one where I was there, I worked in 2 restaurants. I worked in one for much longer than the other one. And that one, they were definitely illegal aliens working there. And it was just, it was in Berkeley, California. Everyone's pro illegal alien there. So they got paid under the table. They got paid very little. And it's also one of these things where restaurant industry, you want to hear stories about why minimum wage is bad. There's a good spot. Every time minimum wage went up, people lost shift, people got fired. Always happened because most people were living off of tips anyway. And so you're just picking the pocket of the owners basically for that at the expense of the employees. So there's a fun little addition there. But is ICE wiping out any of the back of the house type people in these restaurants? And if so, good thing or bad thing?
Nope, they are not. That is right now. As of now, I don't know a single restaurant owner, and I hold meetings with restaurant owners all throughout Southern California. I'm on forums. I don't know a single restaurant owner who's lost anybody due to ICE. Some people have self-deported, but you'll see one story here, one story there. If somebody's, and in the event, those stories that were being blown up by KTLA, I think there was a restaurant up in, Simi Valley or a couple other places where ICE came. They had serious criminal backgrounds. So I have not seen it. That's not to say that we won't see it. We're seeing the Home Depots and the car washes get hit. Perhaps restaurants do. I also think Trump has a certain understanding of the nature of the hospitality industry.
Yeah, he does.
As he has with farm workers, right? Farm workers are different. But one thing I want to throw out there within the context of this ICE and restaurants and hospitality conversation is everyone's like, oh, you want to have undocumented workers so that you can have cheap labor. So we've obviously, I'm assuming we've had, granted we get everybody's paperwork, but they can share social security numbers. We've had some people who have worked for us and then they've come back and said that social security number doesn't work, and we approach them and then they don't show up to work the next day and we're like, oh, they were undocumented, right? Everybody knows it, but we have never looked at, oh, we're going to hire somebody who's undocumented and pay them less. Typically the people who are in the industry who are immigrants, whether documented or undocumented, None of them are getting paid less. That doesn't happen in the hospitality industry. You pay people based on their merit. Like, it is the most merit-based business. So I do think that we need to fix some of that in the United States, and it's an easy fix. But like this idea that we're wiping out the restaurant workforce and that these people were being underpaid and mistreated anyways, like that's a lie. That's propaganda. That's agitprop. That's not the truth.
Yeah,
None of these people understand. All the people on the left, right, who write these articles and these headlines, they have absolutely no idea how any of these industries work. They don't know how business works. They know nothing about economics. So they're being given a story and then they're rewriting a headline. It was like creative writing in third grade. Like, Timmy caught a butterfly. Rewrite the headline and make it something exciting. It's like Timmy's butterfly had huge ravenous teeth. Like, that's what they do. They just rewrite 7-year-old fiction stories.
All right, I got to ask about Bill Gates and his fake butter.
Sorry, I got excited there.
You had an amazing tweet about Bill Gates and his fake butter, and it's just what is he doing with this? And what, as you said, what's wrong with regular butter? Is it I'm pretty darn healthy person, and my family, like, we put a little bread on our butter, like we're very butter based people, and it's just like, it's been fine. It's like what's his deal? This guy he's got his hand in every creepy thing that's happening. But explain what he's doing and what your reaction is.
Well, as I said from the very beginning, the basic formula for being an entrepreneur: find the problem and then find the resolution and make it simple and easy to approach. So when there's no problem, because maybe you've solved them all, you make up a problem. That's really what, climatism is. And this is the same exact idea. They're like, oh, dairy cows are producing carbon emissions, which is ruining our environment. And we're going to solve that. Well, it's like, no, they're not. First of all, California dairy cows, or dairy cows in general, aren't producing, even in your fake formula, they're not the problem. Right? Like, dairy cows do not produce the methane to create any effect to the environment, and in addition to the fact that because they graze, most of that is actually kind of captured in the soil. So there's no problem there. But let's assume, let's play this little mental experiment out. He says, so what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the dairy cows, and we're going to take the exact scientific formula behind butter, and we're going to create it in a lab. We're going to split. I mean, they're splitting atoms, right? They're creating a butter nuclear bomb. So they're actually they're capturing carbon from the environment. Where? Who knows? How do you know it's not like some disgusting pollution that they're capturing? And then they're capturing that carbon, and they're basically creating the same scientific formula for butter, and they're putting it through this compressor, and it's like probably a $1 billion operation that runs on $100 million a day of electricity to then do all of this and push these atoms together and capture the carbon to then create a fat, which then they fortify back, right, with certain elements to create butter that came from the environment and not a cow. That doesn't have a nutritional balance because there's no milk in it. So it doesn't have the nutritional profile. There's no vitamin A, no vitamin D.
So what compels someone like, I mean, I guess it's hard to relate to Bill Gates. He is a 1 in a billion type person, but why? We got butter. It tastes great. It's not our problem in terms of all the problems that we face as a society. So we're eating too much butter. Like, that's not it. And we could probably stand to swap out a little bit of the seed oils for the butter in a lot of cases. And he's like, we're going to make a synthetic butter, which is going to have – there's one thing that I talked to my wife's family are all doctors, and I talked to Dr. Drew about this also recently, is that you can't have an intervention without some other – there's nothing without an effect to it. So even if you do a medical intervention, be it a surgery, be it a drug you're taking, be it a lifestyle change that you're making, even the most minor – everything has other effects that are secondary to the intended effect. And so if we're going to start introducing, we're creating new chemicals to create butter. That's another thing to be concerned about, because we don't know what the new butter is going to do to us. And so we're adding that into the complications here. And Bill Gates he just has no regard for this. You can tell by his vaccine hype. And I'm a pro-vaccine guy in general, not the COVID vaccine, obviously. What wasn't exactly what met the eye. But it's overall, he just seems to be very cavalier about, you start introducing this new stuff and then we don't know what's going to happen. It could be your scenario with your seed oils.
Exactly. So what's the unintended consequence? Everything's going to have an equal and opposite reaction. And because here's why. if you were one of the richest people in the world and you were going to create a product, and you ran the risk of having a reaction that might be, and he looks at everything as numbers, that might be a little bit more costly. It's like, oh, well, that's fine. Even if there is a little bit of an externality, I'll also pay for and solve that problem as well. I think that's the way he looks at this. I mean, I can't put myself in the mind of a psychopath, but
yeah,
I think he looks at it as, okay, if this
we'll
creates
just fix that. Mm-hmm.
all of these problems internally, like 10 or 15 years from now, we're like, why does everybody have, elbow-titis? And it's like, it's that butter. It broke down all of the ligaments in the elbow, and everybody's walking around with big fat elbows. Well, guess what? Bill Gates suddenly owns an elbow company.
Okay, so Chef, you're eating a lot of eggs, you're eating a lot of tallow, you're eating a lot of, it sounds like a lot of whole foods, not a lot of, processed foods, eating a lot of seafood. What are some recommendations for just normal people? Just stuff let's just start small, because for me, one of the things that I do is I try to eat foods with fewer ingredients. It's just, that's really worked out well for me. Just not having things, if it's got a million ingredients, I'm putting it back on the shelf. Typically that seems like a good one to do. You like the little workouts throughout the day. That's a good move. Anything else that you think that's for normal people? You want to stay on top of your game. This is knowing what you know about the food industry. What are your recommendations?
Yeah, and generally speaking, I'm speaking from a father, not necessarily a chef right now, but with some, the chef experience. So like, I'm a snacker, man, snack king. Everything is snacking. And probably, as a dad, right? Like, it's snacking. It's easy. And most of the seed oil consumption and the highly processed food that we consume is done so in the snacking world. So like, we've made it a point, my wife and I, that we always have, like, we'll cook 6 chicken breasts and have them sliced up in the refrigerator. We'll have steak that's like pre-cooked and sliced. And cheap.
I gotta say, one of the most underrated food is the cold leftover steak. I'm not a big leftover guy, but when I make a steak and there's a little extra and I get a little thin slice, hit it with a little salt, I'm just in heaven. And it's the best. I feel like I just make the extra steak and just have it.
That's the point, right? And you don't have to use, what's also really interesting is in the cold form, as you know, it's easier to chew, right? Because you've actually, it's broken down as it's cooling. So when things like top sirloin, some of these cheaper cuts that might be a little bit tougher, like that's what you want to cook, right? Your top sirloin, your chuck steaks, some of these other underutilized cuts that are a lot cheaper, you pre-cook all of those. Who cares if you throw them in the oven and put some seasoning on there? You're throwing them in a refrigerator anyway, and then slice them thin and then just grab like a slice here and there. And then I always have as well, condiments are the second area in which you're consuming all those seed oils. So I always have like some sort of a relish or condiment, right? Whether it's just at all times, tomatoes, olives, garlic, onions, peppers, all those things kind of diced, tossed in, extra virgin olive oil, lots of vinegars. We cook with a lot of vinegars. Having a lot of different types of vinegars, Cabernet wine vinegar, champagne vinegar, white wine vinegar, cider vinegar. We're one of the areas in which people don't think about when they cook is actually acids cutting through the richness of food. Acid also amplifies flavors, so salt and acid is really important. So you can take that cold piece of steak, hit it with a little bit of vinegar and some relish, salt, and like, you don't want a potato chip, right? Like, that's so much better.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. Last thing, just on a positive note, I'm hanging strong on California. It's frustrating a lot, but I've been back here for 4 years, and the goods outweigh the bad so far, but there's a lot of bad, and I think a lot of people look at us and think we're nuts, but there's so many people who cycle through the show and through Breitbart in general who are just, kind of lightly pro-California, even though Newsom is repulsive and Karen Bass is repulsive. What's your pitch that we're all sane and we're not insane that we're out here?
Okay, so people look at California, they look at the polls, and they say, oh, there's an 18-point swing, right? We can even look at the recall for the governor. You had a no-name running against Newsom on the recall, and it was an 18-point swing. So that's a 9-point difference. That's it, right? And that was before this last election. You can make up 6 points just by virtue of the moderates and cleaning the voter rolls, and then another 3 points on pragmatism. So I actually don't think that we're that far apart in California, because what I think has happened is that the entire MAHA demographic is now going to switch over and probably vote right, number one. Number two, we were a 6-1 city council in 2020, 6 Democrats in Huntington Beach, hardcore leftists, progressive Democrats. We're now 7-0. Now, that's not to say it's not going to ebb and flow a little bit, but also so many cities now are becoming charter cities in California. If you're a charter city, you run your city by way of your own charter or city constitution. If you don't, you're running it based on what the state tells you to do, right? Kind of this default state constitution for cities. So many cities now are becoming charter cities, which Sacramento absolutely hates. I think the move to become charter cities is a huge indicator as to what's going to come in future elections, because they're all trying to untether themselves from Sacramento.
Amazing. Chef, it's really nice to talk to you. I know we went super long today. I'll have you back for again, and we can be more focused, but I think it's important for the audience to get to know you. You're a really interesting voice, and I got a feeling you're going to be around for a while doing important things. What would you like to direct people to, anything on your behalf or things that people should be doing to stay on top of things?
Yeah, you can catch most of my cooking videos and food stuff at www.americangravy.com. I'm at Chef Gruel on X. I'm at Andrew Gruel on Instagram. The restaurant is Calico Fish House in Huntington Beach, California. My cookbook, which is just a family cookbook, really fun, easy, approachable, no seed oils, is at www.andrewcookbook.com.
Cool.
And who knows what I got going on in the future, but I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. It's an honor. I followed all your work. Absolutely love it.
Thank you.
And I think we've got similarities. When I heard you a couple days ago talking about, I'm at home with the kids and the nanny's gone, I was like, I understand that. You probably heard them
we're in
the
day
background.
3 of 8. This is one of my 2 big, or day 3 of 7. This is one of my big pushes for the year. I got 2 of them, and I'm really locked in.
Yeah, but we got to get you down to the restaurant. I can't wait. I'll cook for you, and we'll have some fun.
That sounds amazing, and you got to help me with some of my technique too, because I gotta expand. I gotta do more of the seafood. The seafood too comes together a little faster too sometimes than a lot of the stuff I'm into. A lot of the meat, it takes a while and to get that going. So it's just extra incentive. All right, Chef, this has been a blast. Let's do this again soon. Chef Andrew Gruel, and if you're on the West Coast, you got to check out Calico Fish House. Looks amazing, and I'm sure you'll see Andrew pop up now that you're aware of him if you weren't already. Thanks, Chef. See you next time.
Thank you.